Let's get some analysis and reaction to this Newspoll today and the other federal political issues of the day. Emma Dawson joins me. She's Executive Director at think tank Per Capita and former Labor advisor, as well as today, former New South Wales Liberal leader, Kerry Chikarovski. Great to see you both. Kerry, first to you. Some concerns within the coalition ranks, looking at those numbers today.
Well, Kieran, you'll probably hear some people using that old chestnut, oh, well, the only poll that counts is the one on polling day, but I can assure you those numbers today will have a number of people very nervous. If you were a marginal seat holder in the coalition government, you'd be looking at those figures with some concern, a great deal of concern. But even if you were a seat where the margins aren't so small, but maybe you're being challenged by an independent, you'd be a little bit concerned about those figures as well, because you need to be confident that your primary vote is going to be well enough ahead of the Labor Party and well enough ahead of the independent so that you're going to get some preferences. So I think there'll be a few people around today who are kind of thinking, scratching their heads, thinking about what they can do. I think the one thing we can be sure of, Kieran, is that there's not going to be an election in the next 6 or 7 weeks. I think the Prime Minister will push this out as late as he can to give themselves the best opportunity, have a budget, get some clear air and recover.
It's a blink of an eye, though, isn't it, Emma, until the election? Kerry's right, there won't be an election in the next 6 or 7 weeks, but not long after that, Emma.
Not long after that at all. I mean, the budget scheduled, of course, for the 29th of March, and I think we know we have to have an election by the 21st of May. So it's really not that far away. We're talking within the next 4 months, and I think Kerry's absolutely right. These will be some pretty scary numbers for a lot of coalition MPs, and even as she said, I think it's an important point to recognise it matters which seats the swings are on in, right? This is a national poll. If it was applied uniformly, the government would be in a lot of trouble. But what's going to be really interesting is to see where this plays out in those blue ribbon seats that are being challenged, some of them by people like Allegra Spender, Kate Chaney, who come from blue blood Liberal families. I think the holders of those seats will be just as nervous. But really what it says for the government and for the Prime Minister is they haven't got a long time to turn around the perception that has taken hold this summer that they really don't have their hands on the wheel.
And it's not just those independents. There's friendly fire at the moment, Kerry, with the New South Wales Perrottet government. The Treasurer, Matt Keane, saying that this latest business support he wanted to announce alongside the Prime Minister and Josh Frydenberg, but they're nowhere to be found. I mean, this sort of critique, the most severe criticism at the moment, coming from Liberals themselves.
Yeah, and you can understand why, Treasurer Keane and Premier Perrottet are a little bit disappointed that the feds aren't involved. Kieran, all you need to do is walk around Sydney still and see the lack of numbers in the city. And I don't just mean the people who haven't come back to work. I mean, one of the problems that the feds have got is that they're responsible for the fact that we don't have the tourism back. We don't have the backpackers back. We don't have, in any large number, the foreign students back. And so I think it's because of those decisions and those policies that Premier Perrottet and Treasurer Keane are saying that the federal government needs to stump up. And you can kind of understand their angst. I mean, you walk around. One of my favourite restaurants, they can't open on a Monday or Tuesday because they can't get staff. And they can't get staff because the staff that they would normally employ over summer were backpackers and they're just not here. So you can see why this state's Premier and Treasurer would be suggesting that Josh Frydenberg and the Prime Minister should come to the party on this. On the other hand, you can see from the Prime Minister's point of view and Josh Frydenberg's point of view, they have put a lot of money in. They're kind of saying, well, when would it stop? How long is a piece of string? But I think particularly in the capital cities, it's really hurting. And I'm not sure what it's like in Melbourne, but I know in Sydney it's still hurting very much.
Emma, for the Labor Party, for your former colleagues, there must be a sense of, obviously, optimism, but given the events of the last election, they're very cautious, aren't they, at the moment? Obviously, a small target approach. But there must be a great sense of caution as well not to stuff this one up.
I think wisely so. And I think, as Kerry said, ultimately the only poll that does count is the one on election day, whether that be the 14th or the 21st of May. Look, I'm not privy to insider discussions in the ALP anymore, but, certainly my take on that would be caution. As I said earlier, the national polls don't look good, but anyone involved in politics knows it's about where you win votes and what seats you win. I think you can see Anthony Albanese playing a pretty careful game. He's here in Melbourne today. He spent a lot of time out in Chisholm, which is a target seat that Labor needs to win if they're going to win the election. He spent a lot of time in those target seats and other seats in Queensland and in outback New South Wales. I know both leaders are pretty desperate to get to WA to campaign. That doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. But yeah, I think the numbers today would be reassuring for Labor, particularly the primary vote with a 4 in front of it. It's a long time since we've seen that. But again, these are first poll out of summer. It's been a pretty brutal summer. There's 4 months to go. You can expect this to narrow considerably between now and the election. But a lot more attention is being focused on our politicians than it normally would have been over this time of year, of course, because we've all been stuck at home, again, under our own resources, self-imposed lockdowns. Kerry's right, Melbourne's very, very similar to Sydney. There's a lot of restaurants here that can't get staff. The usual buzz of summer is not really there, although we've had a fantastic Australian Open. And so I think people are much more keenly aware of the impact and of some of the failures at the federal level, and not stepping in, as Kerry said, to take responsibility for some of those policy areas that are having a direct impact on life in the cities. So, I think it will be an interesting 4 months, very difficult to turn that perception around, but an unusual campaign because people are really focused on politics in a way that normally they aren't until the campaign itself kicks off.